No more funny faces. Hey, it's John McBride at RMUS. We're doing a live demonstration of the Guardian S made by Sarcos, a robotics company out of Salt Lake City, Utah. We'll just give this a couple more minutes to make sure people are joined, don't have any problems. If there's any issues, just connecting, and then we'll get started right away. So again, thank you for joining us, learning a little bit more about this robotic snake called the Guardian S made by Sarcos. So we'll give it a few seconds here. As soon as Jace gives me a thumbs up, we'll go ahead and get started here. So we'll make sure everybody's joining and getting along. Some of the things we'll be talking about or discussing today is basically how the snake works, development of it, what it weighs, what it's going to be good for, some of the things that we have actually done here at RMUS with my technicians and kind of doing some use cases, and maybe hopefully a webinar like this might generate some other ideas on this piece of equipment that could be used for a number of things. So we're hoping that everybody will have some great input and questions about this. Still looking pretty good there, Jace, as far as connection and moving along. Again, I'm with my co-host, Jace, who is going to be footing some questions, answering questions that might come back to me as well. And please engage and try to get as much of these questions, and we'll get them answered as best as we can overall. And just kind of an overall thing about the Sarcos snake, and basically the Guardian S. One of the things about it is that it was originally created to be kind of a confined space robot, something that could go through spaces and areas that would be very difficult, as well being, again, confined space. We could use it for emergency management. We could use it for any type of police, fire, search and rescue type things in which we do not want to put personnel or be worried about getting it into a space. Some of the nifty things that we've done with Sarcos over time, because they are, again, based here in Salt Lake City, we've gone down and actually worked with the engineers and created a number of different use cases, adding some things on and showing, we'll show a little bit of that today, some of our experience. The one thing is that we're not, you know, we do a lot of drone stuff, and as far as drones go, we definitely are experts in that level, what they do and how they work and whatnot. But we've been getting a ton of requests over time that drones just don't seem to be the answer. We can definitely use different robotics that are out there, and as far as RMUS, Rocky Mountain Unmanned Systems, we are capable of providing this to our current customer base as well as future customers to help them understand what's going to be good to use with the drone or what's going to be better to use with a piece of robotic. So we have a lot of people that have inquired beyond the drones, and of course we're taking this on and providing this for those people. So again, we want to make sure that overall we don't only just do drone stuff, but we are looking into other solutions that keep people not only safe, but also can be very cost effective and as well fairly easy to understand and operate. Some things do take some practice and time, though, there is no doubt. So the segue into that is introducing my technician, Lance Stoddard, who has basically had a bit more time, hands-on time with this unit, kind of showing us a little bit about it today and why basically we have chose what you've done working with the company. I know a lot of emails exchanges, a lot of ideas. So what are the big ones that kind of we've seen as far as like out of the world requests, like just some things that are like, wow, why would we use a snake?
Well, to traverse pipes, pull cable, spray disinfectant, stuff like that. Just different kind of wild ideas that have been brought up to us, and the Guardian S seems to be that platform to do some of those things.
Yeah, and you definitely, one of my longest employed techs here, we have certainly done, and you have certainly done, a lot of these wild idea things. I mean, developing, creating it, and then putting it out there for a solution. And I would say on the drone side, again, as I said earlier, that pretty much experts at that. Yeah, you are. Overall, some of these other things. So let's just go over the specs and stuff like that of the actual Sarcos snake. Just some of the numbers and what we've been playing with. So how long does it usually drive? When we've got a set of batteries in there, what is our drive time?
Right around about an hour. Yeah.
So have an hour, any differences have you seen of like trying to get up something that might pull that time a little bit, maybe dragging something?
Yeah, the steeper of an incline that you're going up, you're putting more torque and drag on the motors, so it will draw the batteries down quicker.
But an average time of about an
Yeah.
hour. About an hour. It's 52 inches long. You had an experience of trying to get this inside of one of your crawl spaces. Is that not right?
Yes.
Yeah, trying to get it in there, navigate around in there. You had found a lot of, maybe you would call it problematic issues, but at the same time, what were you able to gain by doing that? Putting it in a crawl space that you physically could not get in there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't get in there. So.
Right. I was able to get under the crawl space at my home and check on some wiring and some pipes to make sure that they were still, working. They
Functioning and
weren't
working.
rusting away. Yeah.
How old is your house?
It was built in 1873.
1873. So
Yes.
definitely a lot of stuff underneath that area that we could use this to kind of check for exactly what you did. You
Yep.
as a maintenance guy looking underneath there, not getting yourself in trouble.
Right.
Trying to get stuck or anything like that. So awesome. So how much does it weigh? I think it was 18 pounds is the total weight of this.
Correct.
And so it's not too bad as far as transporting it and moving it and things like that, but 18 pounds as far as pulling along, how much can it pull along?
It's rated for 10-pound load.
So a 10-pound load of pulling, doesn't matter what it is, hopefully it doesn't drag real heavy,
If you're pulling it, a slick surface is going to make it a little bit harder. So the more traction it has, the better pulling capability you're going to have.
Sure. So these come in two versions, one's with magnets and one's without.
Correct.
And so that they can go basically a little bit faster when there's no magnets. Is that kind of what I understand?
Yes,
Is it?
because the magnets make it a little bit heavier. So without them, it's lighter and can go a little bit quicker.
Yeah, so we have magnets to be able to stick to things, which we'll demonstrate a little bit later. Hopefully that doesn't turn into a problem of sticking to something, but we did find out the magnets in themselves, it did depend on how thick a ferrous item is. So
Yes.
just sticking to anything, not really recommended, but if it's really thick.
And again, it can climb vertically up a wall, but the more texture the wall has, the better it's going to operate. Yes.
Sure, absolutely. So a couple of the other things is just kind of giving us a preview of or showing us around the actual thing. So we've got a set of batteries that work with this. How many batteries does it take?
The robot itself uses 3 4-cell batteries, and the radio uses 2, which in the radio they are hot swappable. So if you're starting to get low, you can pull one out, put in another one, do the same thing.
Okay, so lithium-ion battery at 14.4 volts, nothing major. Charger that's just like that.
Pretty simple, yeah.
Just plug it in and she charges. Because of the low amperage that it's drawing, we can mix and match these batteries around just a little bit, so it doesn't really matter which ones, because normally when you have multi-battery configurations, we're worried about them actually drawing and not using.
Yeah, and each of the batteries has its own level indicator on it, so that you can
Just
make sure,
make sure that you've got good batteries in there. So pretty simple. And like I said, I had talked about a little bit earlier. What is this thing?
It's the FLIR Dual.
Uh-huh.
It's a RGB cam and a thermal cam in one on panning servo that I've mounted to the Snake in order to give a little bit more ease of pointing a camera, a little bit better quality of the thermal with more color palette options and stuff like that.
So we're independently operating this thing with a separate video stream of just
Correct.
trying that out, just to try it out. So how many cameras does the Sarcos Guardian S have?
We had it configured with 6 RGB cams and then a small thermal sensor.
All right, I'm going to grab this thing, and you can just kind of point around and give us kind of an overall, if you want to call it a tour of the actual unit. So up in the front, this is the front.
Yes, this is your payload with all your camera sensors, or the bulk of them, I should say, because there is one back here. And then your lights and You've got twin cameras in the front, thermal, 2 side cameras, upward facing camera and a rear facing camera.
Boy.
And then also a rear driving camera right here if you want to switch to that.
And you had mentioned the tracks and that basically these are pretty tough as far
Yes.
as how they've been engineered. Basically just like a tank.
Yep,
to be able to drive
they're
around.
basically they're one-piece tread, so they're not going to come apart at the seam. And underneath is the magnet. You really wouldn't be able to see it right now, but
When you
yeah,
put the batteries in here, we're talking once it's all closed up and depending on the sensor, of course, but as a stock system ready to go. What's the IP rating? Do you remember?
65.
65. So 65 IP rating for possibly areas that you need to get into, but nothing you would ever submerge into the. Yeah. Just enough that if you had some moisture or dust or dirt and things like that.
Yes.
And I did see it after you pulled it out of your basement. It was pretty dirty.
It was pretty dirty.
Yeah, pretty awesome. So, well, let's talk about some of the stuff that actually you can connect to it. As I had mentioned earlier, a FLIR camera, but right behind you, right there is a spray bar. So why don't you grab that and kind of show everybody. So we did do an earlier video on this, kind of explaining a bit, kind of explaining this just simplified idea. This wasn't anything that you were like
This is just a
very
rapid proof of concept. So just a spray nozzle mounted to the back to disperse any disinfectant or anything like that you need to get inside of a duct or at a pipe or whatever.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Again, it was just proof of concept.
Yeah, perfect.
Works pretty well though.
Yeah. Other things that we've put on there, but basically this one has a multi-ray on it. So this is a gas detecting sensor. So as far as the multi-ray goes, this is actually what's kind of cool about this is it's integrated into it. It is showing on the UI the outputs of this. So we'll show that here in just a second, but that mechanically it's all there. Up on the back are the antennas. What's the neat thing about the antennas that I had noticed?
So they are flexible, so they're pretty robust. And also the system can run on both a 2.4 gigahertz system or a 900 megahertz system. Both the radio and the robot itself have those radios both in it, and you can switch back and forth. Not only that, but you can also drive it through your internal Wi-Fi network. The radio can connect to one access point, and the robot can roam between any of the others.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
That's actually a pretty neat one. So you're not worried about a direct transmission from basically robot to remote.
Yeah,
and if you
it'll
have
let you go from room to room, as long as there's an access point, you'll have connection. It also comes with some remote antennas that you can connect to the radio and put at the mouth of the pipe that you're going to go in, so that the signal is directed into the pipe rather than trying to find its way to the opening of the pipe.
Sure. Okay, well, let's take a look at the actual radio system. If you want to show that to us a little bit, and kind of, we'll get the audience kind of looking at that. So it's kind of a fairly large tablet. If we can see basically the tablet itself, it's fairly large. And as I'm talking, I can hear myself through the tablet. So we'll do a demonstration a little bit later to where if you're in an emergency situation trying to find a human, you can actually hear them through the remote.
Yes.
Okay, I can hear that. So on top of that, a little bit, we'll do some demonstrations of different modes it does, but we can see that it's a fairly large remote. Has a Windows, basically a Windows program built into this?
Yes, it's a Windows tablet connected to the radio. It's built into it. So you are running a Windows operating system, and then the Guardian's software program over the top of that.
Awesome. So there could be other things, being that it's Windows, that you could do with other software in there if you needed to.
Yeah, like right now we are broadcasting the screen share from it.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see if we can take a look at that, what the screen share looks like. And that is a little bit about the actual unit. So if we take a look at the screen share, this is transmitting directly from the actual unit to be able to see somewhere else. And we are broadcasting that via Wi-Fi, correct?
Correct.
Yep. All right. So we're going to show a little bit more about this, jumping into the different modes and the different types of ways that it drives, if you will, how to navigate a little bit. So I'll let you kind of show that, and we'll get a shot of that. So,
okay.
All right. So let me put this a little bit more in the spot, and you can go ahead and have a seat here. And we'll have the camera just kind of following you along on both. So basically, we're going to go ahead and see a little bit more of how the different driving modes might assist you in whatever the case is. So we'll show that. Right after that, I wanted to kind of show a demonstration of pulling line through a tube and what that might look like if you were going to do such a thing. So if you're pulling electrical lines or something like that down a very small space, we can use the Sarcos Guardian S for that. And then lastly, we'll do an emergency, kind of an emergency situation where we simulated kind of an earthquake or a fall or maybe something like that to find a human in a building. So those are the two things I'd like to or the three things that we'll show. So let's take it over to Lance and kind of have him tell us a little bit about the modes that it drives in and what it's capable of doing.
So right now I'm in the mode that is called follow the leader. So the rear of the snake is just going to follow anywhere that I point the nose. There are also, let's see, anti-roll. There's a sidewind mode that kind of makes it, move like a sidewinder snake.
Let's see that one. The sidewinder mode is actually a really interesting one. So you can see it automatically changes there. And then if you're moving forward and back, but if you hit left and right, you can see it kind of twists a little interesting there. So come on back here. And it moves it sideways in a space if you move it sideways rather than just driving. It's a very, very interesting mode. What are some of the other modes you got there, Lance?
We got a tank mode. We've kind of tipped it over here.
What if it does this? Like, what is it that would happen if it gets into an orientation that's like, oh crap?
So I can put it back into follow the leader and roll it back out of it. Sometimes it's a little tricky depending on
how it's actually orientated.
Correct.
And we can see it just kind of bashing the multi-ray. We can see it bending and moving all kinds of places. Yeah. And so if I was to
takes a minute
to get it to roll right, it seems like you're almost like trying to navigate it through another tight space.
Yes.
I'm going to go assist it. Oh, you got it. A little bit roll on the right.
Yeah, John, you might have to.
You got it. You got it. There we go.
One of the issues that I had under my house
is getting it into an orientation where even trying to flip it hard is kind of a difficult one. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it flipped like that because I was not straight when I went to go into tank mode. So here is tank mode.
So I would almost say on this that it does take a fair amount of practice, almost like flying a drone.
It does. It takes more practice than flying a drone, in my opinion.
There you go. What other modes you got?
There is reverse mode. I'm going to get out of the tank mode first. So if you get all the way into a pipe and can't turn around and you want to come back out, you can go into reverse operation where it is driving backwards at the moment, but I'm controlling it just like if it was in forward mode.
I got it. Very cool.
And if I switch to the rear camera, the rear driving camera.
So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and switch over to the UI and the feed from it and see what Lance is seeing. And with all of the different camera connections or camera views, why don't you just take us through that real quick, the different camera views.
All right, so I'll go back in to follow the leader and then go through some of the cameras. So front left, the rear camera, top view, and then the rear driving, which we were just in. And then there is also the IR camera, which right now is a little blown out.
You're looking for something that might, as far as IR goes, you're looking for something that actually does have some heat. But let me just get in front of it and just see what that looks like. So, and when you're looking for a person or a thing or anything like that,
yep, there you are.
I really show up well because I've got enough delta showing up. So that's one thing about being maybe kind of in a confined space, is that it might be difficult to try and drive through and see some real big differences if you don't have a lot of delta showing in the thermal camera. So,
right.
Yep. Last thing I wanted to show here was the multi-ray. So down on the bottom of the UI, kind of explain a little bit of what you're seeing down there on the bottom left.
As you mean as far as the
Yep.
multi-ray?
Sorry,
So we've got the different sensors that the multi-ray has built into it that gives you the percentages of the parts per million of the different gases that you may be searching for.
And if we were to simulate basically a gas expulsion of some sort and create that, what is it going to look like? So I've got a lighter in my hand here. I'm just going to spray a bit of something in there, and we'll just see if that is able to detect. But the main thing is being able to detect it on the actual UI part.
Yes.
So I'm going to try.
Yeah, it's registering. It's just not registering enough to give an alarm.
There it goes. There it goes with a simple alarm, and then gives you an OK or a clear if it's gone. And we can see that on the UI, which is actually really cool. Getting into a space and being able to detect something like that. So very neat. Very neat. I think, like I said, we'll go ahead and get the area set up for basically doing a cable pull. So let's get the area set up for a cable pull. Nate's going to assist with this, as well as helping out Lance, just kind of getting it ready. We're going to drive through an area here, and then try to see how that's going to work and what that would do. So and what the actual unit is seeing while Lance is piloting it around. So, Jace, did we have any questions so far on this broadcast, as far as people wondering some things?
Yes, indeed we do. So let's look at a couple things. Now, for starters, what I want to caveat this with is the video feed that comes from the Sarcos, that comes from the Guardian S that you're seeing on the remote, is much smoother than it appears in the live stream. Part of it is that we're just a little limited in this space. It is our training space. You can see it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Utilitarian is what I'm going to go for this particular phrase. So the point is we're a little bit limited with our wireless signal, and that's actually how we're bringing the feed from the Sarcos into here. Is we're using it with our live stream system, and it's not perfect for this type of scenario, but it is what it is. We still want to give you an idea of kind of what you're seeing, but just know that that video feed looks much better in person than what you're going to see on the live stream. So we just want to let you know that going into it. I'm sure that's a question that some people are going to have. But we want to show kind of this little highlight reel that we've got, that we want to show you a couple of scenarios that we've done. We've done them on site. We did these, you know, just again as kind of some of these sample scenarios. We had a 360 camera on there. We had the FLIR Duo on at one time. We were testing some sprayer stuff. So just taking a look at some of what we're looking at here. So this was an example scenario of us basically in a, you know, this is, you know, HVAC type of scenario. Driving around in rooms and stuff like that. You can see with the FLIR camera with the rotate, the pan function that he's got. It's really a very effective system. And just giving you a closer look, a little bit closer look of the remote itself. What does the remote look like? How does it function? It's really very intuitive. It's very user-friendly in that way. And this kind of gives you a bit of an idea. You see that more smooth motion that I'm talking about, the actual feed that you're getting off of the remote. And again, giving you a closer look at the lights, the adjustable brightness, what it looks like when it's entering these things. You know, just kind of give you an idea of some of the use case, what it actually looks like in practice. Again, this is the video feed that's being recorded on that was actually the video feed from the FLIR Duo that you were seeing right there. So again, navigating, going through these, and here's some of your look at it crawling on a wall, and that's something we'll detail a little bit later. Again, it's actually very effective and for these types of scenarios. So it's really very cool. When we were going through these, you know, as far as some of the stuff we're talking about with magnetics and stuff like that, a lot of it is going to depend, and John can speak more. John and Lance can speak more to this. Is, you know, it's part of it depends on the density, I guess you would say, the magnetivity of the material. How ferrous? Yeah, there you go. There's your scientific phrase. But you know, it has to do with that. You know, it's not going to stick to the side of like these little ducks or something like that. I mean, we're not going to be able to do a 360 style type of thing on the side of these ducks. They're just not. They just don't have that mass, that weight, that's necessary for it to connect to. But again, that just gives you, you know, kind of a little better idea of what it looks like in the field, what it looks like in practice, and a better view of what that live view looks like. So,
any questions?
Yeah. We've got a couple here. Let me look. We did have a question about whether it's intrinsically safe, rated as intrinsically safe.
Mm-hmm. I would almost say no.
Probably not.
Yeah. So it's a good question, because it's always a good question. That's always something that comes up. Is it intrinsically safe? The requirements to do so, I don't think that Sarcos has quite pushed the steps with that. But then we have other things in just the way things are designed, because this has come up a ton with basically drone stuff too, right?
Yes.
Is the drone, Lance, can you make the drone intrinsically safe? What is the biggest problem with it as far as even both drones and...
It's mostly the electric motor being exposed.
Yes, the motors are exposed. They're hard to make that kind of go away. Mm-hmm. The multi-ray is intrinsically safe, but no, not the unit. So good question, really good question. Anything else, Jace?
Yes, we've got more of those. Sorry, I'm managing audio and cameras and going everywhere back and forth, so apologize, everybody. But yeah, now Lane Vayon, one of our what would you call him? What would Lane's title be?
Oh. Drone extraordinaire with the inspection space. He knows this world very well.
Yeah, he's been someone that we've collaborated with. He's hosted some of our trainings, our drone crew trainings, that kind of stuff, or you know, some of our safety management system trainings and that kind of stuff. He kind of wrote some of that curriculum and stuff for our course. So he did indicate that no, it wouldn't indicate that it's rated as intrinsically safe at the moment, which, you know, again, it makes sense. That's a pretty high bar for stuff like that.
And costs, it also costs a lot of money. That's the big thing. Like, it's not just so easy to make it do that when we're talking about it. So it's very expensive, and bumps that price up a lot if they were to develop such a thing. But as again Lance and I had said, when you have an exposed electrical motor within something that's got to go in and work somewhere, I haven't seen anything that actually has been deemed intrinsically safe with a running motor on the outside.
Not yet. No.
Not yet. I have not seen anything like that. So.
Sure. Let me see. How is it? Okay. This is interesting. This is an interesting one. How is it with falls? If one knows, let's see, if one knows the place has vertical sections, it tows a line, fall protection, recovery line, what is that going to look like? I mean, I think kind of in a way that this is trying to speak to durability.
Sure.
Obviously, when you do these kind of things, part of what you're talking about is what are the antennas? How is the body going to be able to handle it? And then talk about the payload that's on there. I mean, you have a Duo or something like that. Obviously, that's going to be a factor. So,
Payload's going to change it a little bit, but the Guardian S itself is pretty robust. I've beat it up quite a bit in my learning how to drive it. I've had it fall off the door, and it's a beast. It's pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
So the antennas are strong.
we saw it rolling around upside down.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, and I think that would be the big question is, what if it's up 20 feet in the air? What if it falls down and smacks really hard? We're talking 18 pounds.
We might have to test that, John.
Okay. We might have to test it. But we have seen a number of videos of it in a state falling and dropping, falling off the table as driving it around, like you'd said. So I would say it's pretty durable overall.
And all the bumps and bruises, if you will, that it has taken, I haven't noticed any hiccups in the way it operates.
Oh, yeah.
So
other than the payload, as you had mentioned, it's something that might be attached to it could end up...
An external payload, correct, could, get knocked off.
So the idea, in some cases, in working with Sarcos, is basically being able to integrate this stuff into a little bit harder setup than just zip tying or strapping or double-sided sticky tape or duct tape on this thing. So right now we got a lot of proof of concept ideas, but integration is probably the goal overall. So another question?
Would you speak a little bit to the material, the material of the ship? What the material of the construction of it? Mm-hmm. What is it made out of? Give us a little bit. We kind of skipped right over some of that portion of it. Speak to that just a little bit. What again, the treads, the center of it. What's in the center of it? That kind of thing.
Well, it's kind of a fascinating robot, is it not? You want me to grab it and you kind of tell a little bit about it, because the construction of it is pretty much plastic, metal, motors.
I should say plastic, but it is a pretty durable polymer, some sort of plastic. That's all going to be.
You stay here. I'll go grab it. Development on it.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, I was stumbling a little bit.
So it is made out of a very hardened stuff, machined aluminum.
Yeah, there's a lot of aluminum, but a lot of it is hard plastic. We've got the robot joints through the protective cover here, that it is waterproof, it is airtight between this compartment and that compartment for that IP65 rating. As far as the materials go, other than the aluminum, it'd be really hard to say what it exactly is.
But again, we've been pretty not nice to it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's put it over here. Jace, if you have any other questions, if not, we can just go ahead and show it going through this pipe here.
Yeah. So let me get through let me look at some of these other questions here. Gosh, I got to pull these headphones off because I get a 1 second echo and
It messes with you.
oh man, it so messes with your brain. So that's I'm going back and forth here. Just a couple of follow-ups. I think a little bit late joiners to the webinar. What's the name of the company that builds the unit? It is Sarcos. You can look them up. They actually make a lot of different robots. It's primarily robotics. That kind of stuff. That's a very cool company doing a lot of really cool stuff. So Sarcos, the IP resistance rating is IP65, correct?
Correct.
Yes, it's IP65. Just kind of reiterating that. Just a couple things, other comments. This will revolutionize inspection of drains. Is the unit waterproof? Again, IP65. And emergency rescue will benefit from this also. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those use case scenarios that we absolutely see. I mean, obviously, this is going to be something where it's, I can't fit into this space, or we can't fit somebody in this space. We need to find out what's blocking this drainage or something like that, or even, again, one of those pulling lines or something like that. We're working in an area. It could be running an Ethernet cable through a tight space that you can't fit someone through, or something like that. Something that has curves or something like that. There's definitely anything that, those tight spaces, those types of things. You need to get into that area, pull something through that area. Again, spray or disinfect that area. That's
cool.
kind of primarily the use cases that we're looking for. And again, someone else. Another comment on here, storage tanks, that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously you could see a use case scenario for that type of thing. Big, thick, very large, thick storage tank or something like that.
Well, you want to go ahead and show this demonstration of this, and we'll just kind of, so the idea here is that we've had already Sarcos informing us and letting us know that one of their actual customers is using this to pull cable and line, as Jace had mentioned, and we'll just do that real quick and show it, just how that kind of might work. But what we've got is a 1,500-pound line that is then a leader line, basically run through the pipe, and then for some cases, people are hooking these to winches on the other side and dragging the cable line all the way through. So this is a little bit more difficult to navigate in a sense, because we've got a couple of bends and turns in this actual pipe that we're going to show. So let's jump over to Lance and watch him actually get ready to do this, and then we'll follow along also with the video feed coming that he can actually see. So let's go ahead and show that. And Lance getting ready to go, and just maybe a little bit of narration on what you're kind of looking for or doing as you get through this. And if we take a look at it, that very first corner is a pretty tight 90-degree corner.
Yeah, it is a 90. However, the pipe is large enough that it's not going to cause too many problems trying to navigate it. The smaller the pipe you start to go inside, your 90s are going to need to be a little bit more gradual. And I've got all the lights on. If I get in here just a little bit, John, do you want to? I kind of turn the lights off, and I can still see somewhat, but it's grainy just because of the lighting. We've got quite a bit of, that's at 30% right there, 80%. Let's start to navigate that corner a little bit.
I'm just going to keep the cable taut. I was just going to keep the cable taut, just so it doesn't get wrapped up on anything. But once it's kind of in there, let's look at the backwards view camera.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to do, is going to kind of cycle through some of the cameras. Obviously, we're not going to see a whole lot, but we can see the top of the pipe there. That's the upward facing camera. And left and right. And then we'll go to the back camera so that we can see back towards where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And switch back over to the front left.
All right.
As I approach this this T section up here that actually has a little bit of a drop. It's not major, but it does drop a little bit. Just kind of take it nice and slow.
Oh, I wanted to show one thing here, Lance, is that even though you've got your LEL indicators, you also have on this unit the actual
Oh yeah.
yeah, what the robot's doing. I had forgot to mention that even earlier.
I did too.
Is that we have basically a avatar that shows what the robot is doing while it's in a space. You know, how much you're giving it, what it's moving around and doing.
Right. It shows you, John. You got me stuck.
I don't think so. Maybe.
So we're gonna switch to the rear camera. See what we got going on here.
Multi-ray stuck. There you go.
There we are.
I think that maybe your rope was caught on one of these.
I think
Could
so
have been.
too.
I think your line was caught on the screw.
Something to certainly keep in mind, huh? Yeah. Of course, rolling it, moving it.
Yeah, I did just tip it on its side, but I was able to get it righted pretty easy, a lot easier than last time.
So there's our cable coming out the back end.
I will say, I want to throw this in here. I want to throw this in here a little bit. Is that it flipping over and that kind of stuff is, you know, it's genuinely, it's part of the reality of operating a platform like this. You're operating in a tight space and things like that, and you know what? It's gonna flip over sometimes. It's gonna have that type of thing. But you saw Lance coming through. He watched it. He was diagnosing it. I'm sure it felt like 1,000 years because he's in the middle of a live stream. But I mean, it was righted fairly quickly. It's something that takes practice and that kind of thing to be able to implement, to be able to understand. And again, this is part of the reality of operating with a system like this. It's going to flip, it's going to tug, it's going to get that kind of thing. But you can see, and that speaks to the robustness, if you will, of the system. It's made to be able to flip around and flop and to be able to handle that type of treatment and that type of thing. I think they understand that, knowing that it's going to get in that scenario and it's going to flip over, it's going to flop around. You know, so that's part of what they built into this system, and you know, that's a very real portion of operating like this. So.
And takes practice.
It does. It is all in all, it's a narrow vehicle. You know, it doesn't have the wheelbase to keep it from tipping over. So you will have a tip over once in a while.
Sure. All right. So basically, this next part is again just kind of a emergency management situation. So we do have Nate basically playing somebody that might be inside of an area that might be difficult to navigate. We're going to jump back over to the live feed. Remember that it's kind of choppy, but what Lance is actually seeing is actually pretty good as far as the live feed goes. And then kind of utilize that infrared camera to kind of show somebody or a body that might be in the way, or need to be found, rather.
The lights are off over here, but unfortunately we've got a lot of light coming through the windows.
Here, let me do this before you get too far. Let me switch here real quick. And just Nate, we got Nate as our subject in there, and it is very dark. You can see, this is what he's seeing right now. So the lights are off, the blinds are shut. It's not a bright space, but
Camera does pretty good. Go ahead.
I'm just going to switch over to the IR. See if we can find Nate.
So again, one of the nifty things about this is the capability of, again, getting it into an area or space that is complicated. It's difficult. While I was there in Virginia, I had emergency management, just a ton of people there that were happy to see this kind of a robot that could be used in a scenario like this, and especially with radiation type issues that if you put some kind of a radiation monitor on there to kind of get it into a space and see if there's bad whatever going on. In this case, we're using it to find possibly Nate, who is stuck in there. And that
There he is.
kind of looks like a person to me. And here he is showing it to come and basically rescue him, or at least figure out where he is.
While he's holding a camera.
Hold that shot for me, Lance. So I'm going to switch between. This is what we're seeing obviously on the Guardian S itself, and Nate is in there with his camera. This is what Nate's seeing right now, and you can see how well this is pulling this off. Why don't you go ahead and flip on the lights, Lance? There we go. Yep. So again, we'll go back and forth. This is what Nate is seeing currently, and going back to what the Guardian S is seeing. You can obviously see the difference here.
Excellent. Well, just to navigate a simple space like that, Jace, I would think that the Guardian S is kind of the choice. Now, it definitely would take a bit more practice if there was rubble and debris and, you know, rebar and stuff like this, in which I would imagine would be a little bit more complicated. But if I overall was trying to drive this or move it through a space that, again, would be very complicated, we do have the LEL monitor on there to get into an area and find out if there was a gas leak at this time or anything like that. So I think as a piece of robotic technology moving forward, learning what to do with it, I think that's where we're at as far as what we're going to do. Is it available to purchase? Sure, it absolutely is. We can get one to you. You can start messing around with it if you need to. But overall, we want to make sure that we've gone through a number of different scenarios to give people the experience and the understanding of what it would take to both navigate and do. We do have a level of training built into this one as well. So a lot of cool stuff as far as the capability goes. Let's go ahead and bring the snake back in here, and we'll just kind of get last minute questions here, Jace, if you've got some. And how are we doing on time? Are we good on time?
We've been running for about 45 minutes or so.
Okay. So
45 minutes or so.
Let's go ahead and just do a couple more questions here and make sure that overall that there's, you know, we've answered those, as well as giving you guys some opportunity to maybe show a couple other things if we have the time to do so on the unit, and we'll go from there. So, Jace, do you have any other comments or questions?
Yeah. Let me take a look here. Let's see here. Let me scroll up to the top here.
Mm-hmm.
Does the cable puller have a remote release? If it goes in for a pull, then has to let a line go for any reason. Power demand for 2 or 3 stage pull, 2 from one end, 1 from the other. Does it have something like that built into it?
Well, the simplest setup we have here is a D-ring on the back of it and a carabiner hooked to that. Could it be developed a little bit further for an automatic release or a just in case you got too much tension? I'm sure that something like that can be considered if it comes down to that, locking up or doing. But that's actually a really good development question on if you were to put it in this scenario. We've just created a very simple, you know, this is what you can do. But yeah, it's a D-ring currently with a carabiner on the back end. So something that we could let Sarcos know that if somebody was to do that. And that's exactly what these webinars are for, by the way, right, Jace? Exactly what these are for is ideas and things that we wouldn't actually think about, because of the world you guys are considering putting this into an environment? Great question.
Absolutely. I mean, you're obviously going to see things that, I mean, being in the field, doing that every day, stuff that we haven't encountered yet. Again, this is something it's a fairly new product to us. We've done our kind of our diligence, and we're still doing our due diligence on researching, finding the use case scenarios, trying to find those, finding the solutions to those things. That it's what we do. So, let's see. Let's see. I'm not sure if we'll know the answer to this question. If looking for a person can add a RK1 GX 2009 4 gas meter. Let's see.
Sounds like a special payload that
Yes.
be added to this. We'll go back into the actual development of this. It's fairly, I would call it new, but can we integrate that? Well, on this multi-ray, it's nothing more than a USB connection into the thing. Could it be integrated as far as like a hardy piece of equipment on there? I'm pretty sure it could. So overall, we just have a very simplistic USB to a USB connection that delivers the information, and the basically SDK within that is now displaying it on the UI. So it's all about how much do you want to spend to develop such a thing, but also a very good question.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we're just scratching the surface on some of these use case scenarios and stuff like that. And actually, kind of as a follow-up to this, for other meters, you could place one with the display in view of a camera. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something you could place a meter there, say it has a lighted screen or something like that, that you could have a display. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have this gas meter. It's not built to integrate with the UI yet, but we placed it here. It's mounted. It's in view of a camera. So if I cut to the rear camera, I mean, I'm not using that for navigation, but I am able to see a reading. I'm able to take that reading and utilize that. So yeah, that's something absolutely you could do.
Do you remember me doing this on a drone for a use case of exactly that? Yeah.
What meter was that?
It was a multi-ray as well, but it was an SO2 meter. It was detecting specifically SO2. So, but duct taped on the side of a 210 to
Turn the camera and point it
at the screen. So.
Yep, that's exactly right. I do remember that. Let's see here real quick. Get another one. Gosh, it's really interesting trying to manage all this stuff by myself at one time. Can your video feeds be displayed like a multi-view? So see several cameras at one time.
So no, this is going to be individual. While piloting, this is going to be individual camera sources coming in which you have to pick. Now, there was a program that you could then record, because when you press record, as it records, if I'm not mistaken, Lance, as you press record, all 6 cameras are recording at one time.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
Yes.
so all of them are recording at once. But they were working on a level of software to be able to then kind of use it like a 360 camera, if you will. In post.
Yeah.
So nothing you can do real time or live. You'd have to be able to, you're just choosing the camera for navigation and possibly a quick inspection or something like that. But you're not getting this I think, a UI that allows you to look at all the cameras all the time like that. So good question, though. Good question.
Mic on, camera free change. Your mic off. Again, special payloads for meters, yes, that kind of stuff. Again, another follow-up, if you can speak a little more to this as far as broadcast over LTE. This might be something we need to kind of pull Lance in a little bit and give us a little bit of, give us a little bit of feedback as far as, again, broadcasting over LTE.
As far as the video feed?
Or can you?
I currently no, but I'm sure it could be done. We're obviously broadcasting to our Wi-Fi right now for Jace's feed. Whatever way you can take that and get it somewhere else, right?
Yeah, and if you're doing any other type of video transmission from this, as far as just moving it from one space to the other, control-wise, I did want to touch on that. Control-wise, again, we've run it from one side of the building to the other side of the building, hopping basically between the network, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't do anything in changing the video feed, you
No.
know, as far as operation goes.
No. It is, both units are running on the 2.4. They're not running on the 5 gig. It would have a little bit better if it was on the 5, but unfortunately it's just got the 2.4 radios and the 900 meg. The 900 meg won't work through the Wi-Fi, but the 2.4 radios will work through the Wi-Fi network.
Excellent.
If it's set up. So if there's a network inside of, you know, a large
warehouse,
refinery, you know, even a mine, you know, if somebody's gone down there and laid the cable and had the access points, you know, you've got control.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Jace?
My mic got back on here. I think I might be able to speak to this a little bit as far as doing that. I mean, we have kind of demonstrated more or less a proof of concept as far as broadcasting video from one place to the other. Again, I mean, you're seeing some of the potential limitations you're going to have here. How strong is your LTE connection? What's your bandwidth like? What's the traffic on it like that day? Are there a lot of people doing a lot of heavy lifting on an LTE network that day? It's just going to depend on that. I would say ultimately maybe your best solution is going to be integrating something through the Windows OS. As far as anything else, there's about 1 million live broadcast solutions and scenarios and stuff like that. So I would tend to err on that, as it's like, okay, let's find something, because I mean, it is a Windows tablet. I mean, we can sit there. The way that we were doing this is we pulled the video feed. We're able to do that from a web browser, and that's how we pulled the video feed, and we're sharing the screen. And there's about 10 million different solutions for broadcasting, just sharing your screen from there and sharing it to a remote, to an offsite location, or streaming it, if you will. I mean, gosh, you could stream it straight to YouTube if you have the right software and the right method. So I'd say, as far as LTE broadcasting and that kind of thing, that's probably going to be your primary source of doing something like that, is integrating it with that. So again, you know, we've kind of have had that proof of concept today. It would just be finding the right solution that works with your workflow, I think.
And I will say that Sarcos is, you know,
Oh, hold on a sec. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that Sarcos is, you know, they do a little bit of, you know, custom type stuff. You know, if you have a specific thing that you need them to do, they'll look into it and see if they can accomplish that task for you in your build.
And I've got another question that kind of speaks to this, and it is another one. What about being able to screencast from the controller to a TV via HDMI? Currently, there is no HDMI. There is no HDMI port on that feed. Now, there are other solutions that potentially could be built into this, and I actually hadn't even thought about doing this yet. Is like doing a Miracast type system, type of thing to an HD TV. That could very well be possible, and that might be built into that remote. We can test that out. I've got Miracast adapters and stuff like that. That if you're not familiar with Miracast, it's just kind of its own little. I think it's DLNA or DNLA. I can't remember exactly what they call it, but it's a type of wireless video broadcast system. So if you've ever done like a Chromecast or like broadcast your phone from like an Android device to a Chromecast, or an Android device to like a Fire TV, that's what that's based on, is that DLNA or DNLA. I can't remember which. Or or even some TVs have that built into it, where you wirelessly cast your screen. Again, that might be something that's built into that tablet, but I'm not 100. We're not sure, just because we haven't tried it. But that's potentially something that's a good idea, something that we should try out for sure. And that makes that a very simple answer to that question. But the short answer is there's no HDMI port on the unit itself.
Yeah, there's no.
So yeah, there's no port. There is a USB port. There's a USB port there, which is like a data port, I believe. So hard drive, you could do external hard drives, jump drives, and stuff like that, I believe. But yeah, that's what that. It's data transfer. It's not video transfer. Put it that way. It's not for data transfer. So so there you go. Let me see. I'm gonna bump over to, gotta switch my windows here, see if we've got anything, any other questions. I don't think we have anything else. Most of the stuff is coming through Vimeo, so as far as Facebook and that goes. So what else do you guys have? Anything else as far as wrap up? I mean, you talked about the door, that kind of thing. What else you got for us?
Well, other than like I said, we can stick it to the door. Should we show sticking it to the door and just seeing how that works? Nate, why don't you follow me with your camera? All right, we'll try to keep her straight there. There you go. So, again, this does depend on the ferrous material, how much magnetism the item has. It works really well to stick to the door, you know, as far as sticking to the door, we can see that. And depending, again, Lance had said earlier about the surface itself. This is a pretty slick surface as far as it trying to climb up it. It will climb up it, and it is stuck to it, you know. So it will attempt to try to climb and do, but it's pretty stuck there. And if you can navigate your way to get onto it, actually a really neat feature of that. I would be a little bit more cautious flying it upside down or driving it upside down in a space. But yeah, just kind of show you that it's got some pretty strong magnets trying to get around and move.
Yeah, I've driven it on the side of a large walk-in HVAC unit. I drove it in circles on the vertical wall, and it seemed, I was a little nervous, but it worked.
That in our sample video.
Yeah. So excellent. Yeah. Other than that, you know, this is a basically always in development here. We're not talking something that's like a finalized product, except for if you just had 6 cameras, a FLIR camera, go put it in a space. And there's definitely some use cases here that you and I have messed around with and tried and experimented.
And we hear new ones every day.
And new ones every day. So I don't think we have any other things other than, you know, I appreciate it. And here we go. Jace, did you have something else, I guess?
I do. I've got another one for you. Something I hadn't thought of and haven't asked yet is the storage of the video when you record. Is it recording to SD cards? Is it recording to the tablet? Where is that video file? Where's that being recorded when you're actually recording your mission, so to speak? So, yeah, if you could speak to that a little bit, that would be great.
It'll record 2 different ways actually. So the Snake itself, or the Guardian S, has an onboard SD card that's removable, and when you tell the system to record from the Guardian S, it is recording all 6 cameras to that card. Sorry, I keep looking at Jace instead of the camera. But you can also tell the radio to record as well. So if you do that, it is recording onto the tablet, onto its drive, and so you will then connect to it and pull the file off of it. But that file is going to be a recording of whatever camera you had selected at the time, where the onboard SD card is recording all of them at once.
What about taking pictures versus video? Does it do
it
pictures
doesn't,
versus video? It just
it
does
doesn't.
video. Yeah.
No.
Just
does
video.
Just video.
Yeah.
And then you take your stills out of that video in post.
A lot of the other inspection machines that we've seen are not trying to get into a space and take this beautiful picture. It's literally 4K video or something like that that's been recorded and pulling the screenshots from it. Yeah. Excellent. Good question.
I could say this. The kind of genesis of this question was asking, you know, how quick can we turn around data when we grab the data or something like that, and that would tend to be what that looks like. It's like, you know, if you do have a scenario, of course, there's always a possibility of a scenario where it's like we want to grab something off it very quickly. You can grab the remote feed video of it and then get that off instantly, and then when you're back with the ship, whatever, you want to grab the card, dump the data, then you have something, your higher quality video that you can do. But in that way, you do have the live stream that you can immediately push out, and then get those files. So that's just kind of a little bit of a scenario workflow type of question. So yeah,
cool. Jace, unless you do, I'm actually this was actually a pretty good overall webinar, kind of explaining a little bit more of our focus into just unmanned systems in general, and not specifically about drones. Again, we've been doing drones for a long time, so this is a new one for us, especially you and I.
It is.
Yeah, especially you and I.
But it's been fun to do something on the ground versus in the air.
Yeah, I'm sure. So again, thank you, Lance, for being here. One of the best technicians you could ever meet out there, as far as coming up with new ideas and generating new stuff. You're working on a new thing right now. It's actually pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So we engineer, we create it, we make it. We try to create solutions for you guys, and again, work closely with these companies in order to give back this feedback on capability and as well as possibilities when it comes down to what we do. So thanks again for joining us on this webinar on the Guardian S Snake, and look forward to seeing you next week on our next webinar, and that, I believe, is on the, what is that one on? The photo kite. I mean, I know we're getting it here pretty soon, but definitely see us this next week on the photo kite, and hopefully we have that in our hands in which you and I can just play around.
We're all pretty excited about that.
Pretty excited.
I'm really stoked about the photo kite.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really cool. Lots of cool stuff coming.
All right. Thanks, guys. Again, if you guys have any questions on anything, sales@armus.com. Get a hold of my sales team for anything that you guys need, and as well as give us some information, give us a call if you guys have any questions on anything. Appreciate it. Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome.
Okay.